Ladies and gentlemen, my sisters and brothers, from the great, justly and aptly named volunteer state, we have the good fortune to present the man who will introduce the President tonight. The man whom I am introducing is the distinguished son of a distinguished family, and he continues the outstanding, legendary role of his father, his mother, and his foreparents in moving the cause of freedom and justice forward. I worked and have worked with him and his family, with this young man, all of his life. And I've watched him grow in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and man. One of the reasons for his greatness, and he is a great spirit, is that he acts and reacts because, among other things, he recognizes the necessity of using, utilizing, and redeeming the time that God has given him. And so he can join with the poet in saying, only a minute, 60 seconds in it. Didn't ask for it, can't refuse it. Must pay if I abuse it. Only a minute, 60 seconds in it, but eternity is wrapped up in it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand to the Vice President of the United States of America, the Honorable Al Gore, Jr.
Thank you very much. Boy, that's great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing the President. I first want to thank Ben Hooks for his generous words and for his outstanding leadership in a distinguished career. We're so grateful to you and so indebted to you. To Ralph Neese, the Executive Director, a longtime friend and ally, to the 3 Hubert Humphrey Civil Rights Award recipients, Justin Dart, Chairman of the President's Commission on Employment, Dorothy Hyatt, President of the National Council of Negro Women, Raul Isaguirre, President of the National Council of La Raza, and other distinguished guests. It was 1950. The Supreme Court was considering the case of a black man named Herman Sweat, who wanted to go to law school in Texas, and a 68-year-old black professor named McLaurin, who had been rejected by the doctoral program at the University of Oklahoma. In South Carolina, 20 black parents sued a school board because they thought it was wrong for the taxpayers to spend 4 times as much money on a white child's education as was spent on one who was black. Whites fought back in South Carolina, called in bank loans, and fired people from their jobs, refused to sell seed to black farmers for planting. These were the headlines the year this leadership council, this leadership conference was founded. I was then a young boy in Carthage, Tennessee, and it takes me by surprise to realize how very recent it all was. We have indeed come a long way, and through that struggle, since the days A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, and Arnold Aronson formed this historic alliance, the Leadership Conference has lived up to its name by providing true leadership at each historic juncture. Sometimes it was making something happen, like the Voting Rights Act. Sometimes it was making sure something didn't happen, like keeping Hainsworth or Carswell or Bork off the Supreme Court. But the dogged and tireless work of this organization helped make it possible to make progress, whether in education or employment or housing or public employment. It has kept us all bipartisan. It has kept us all clearly and truly on target. Even during the dark days of the last 12 years, we have made progress. People sometimes forget that since 1981, we've passed more than 24 civil rights bills, from Martin Luther King Day to the Civil Rights Act of 1991, and you did it. We have to give that great measure of thanks to the Leadership Conference for those victories, but let's face it, Since 1980, we've been fighting a rearguard action. The radical right, the purveyors of the politics of hate and division, had their victories too. They dismantled enforcement at the Department of Justice. They filled the federal courts with those who saw no need to redress the inequities of the past. We wanted a new day. They just wanted to refight old battles and keep America divided. Ladies and gentlemen, that time is now over. And it is over in large part because of the man I am proud to introduce to you now. He was also a young boy growing up in the Deep South in the late 40s and throughout the 1950s, but he was stirred and shaped by the struggle for civil rights, particularly in the fall of 1957, a transforming event for Bill Clinton, when 9 black students, 3 boys and 6 girls, walked through an angry crowd into Central High School in Little Rock. His public life since that time has been shaped by those events. His public life has been one of understanding and shared purpose with the civil rights struggle. While for 12 years there have been those pitting people against each other, he has called for reconciliation. While for the last 12 years there were those who ducked the responsibility of leadership, he has argued government should assume responsibility. While for 12 years there have been those who sought to weaken laws preventing discrimination, Bill Clinton has sought to strengthen them. And now, as President of the United States, he is here to tell you that the long years of apathy toward civil rights are over. We have an administration that is determined that they're over. Turn on the television news tonight, and you will not see this story, but you could if the news was presented a little differently. Just imagine a story that says, today, President Bill Clinton and his administration strongly enforced all of the civil rights laws of this country. That happened today. It's not in the nature of things to describe it as a remarkable event, but today, Bill Clinton and his administration made sure that there was no discrimination in federal contracts or federal jobs. We have an administration that is committed to signing the motor voter bill because it shouldn't be harder to register your opinion than to register your car. We have an administration making sure we have judges who support civil rights, whether on the federal bench or on the bench of the Supreme Court. We're committed to that cause. We have an administration and a president committed to civil rights and determined to bring Americans together. The American people elected Bill Clinton because the American people wanted change. And from the ballot box to the Supreme Court, change has arrived. It is my pleasure to introduce to you now a man shaped by the civil rights struggles of the past and who will now himself shape the civil rights struggles of the future. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton. No, I just said you're committed to trying to win it.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, for that wonderful introduction and for being such a great partner in the campaign of 1992 and in this administration. I think it is fair to say that Vice President Gore has already exercised a larger role in this administration than perhaps any vice president in the history of this country, and I hope he will continue to do so. I'm honored to be here with Ralph Naess and with my longtime friend, Benjamin Hooks. Don't you just love to hear Ben talk? I mean, really, I could hear him intone those poems from now till tomorrow morning, reminding me of the rhythms of my childhood and the faith of our parents. I'm proud to be here with all of you tonight, not only because of what you have done for the last 4 decades and more, but because of what together we must do now. I'm proud of your commitment to civil rights. I'm proud to be here with our Attorney General, Janet Reno, who is the embodiment of that. I thank you for the vote of the National Board of the Leadership Conference today to support the nomination of Lani Guinier to be Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. I want to say a special word of support for Lani Guinier. I went to law school with her, and I announced at the Justice Department the other day when we announced all of our assistant attorneys general that she had actually sued me once. And not only that, she didn't lose. And I nominated her anyway. So the Senate ought to be able to put up with a little controversy in the cause of civil rights and go on and confirm her so we can get about the business of America. I want to say, too, how honored I am to be here with your honorees, my friend Dorothy Hyatt from the Freedom Schools in Mississippi to the Black Family Reunion. What a guiding spirit she has been to all of us. I want to take my hat off to Raul Izaguirre for his leading voice. Over 20 years ago, I first came in contact with La Raza as a movement and a commitment, and I have watched them over these years help people all across the country with the practical problems of life, which give real meaning to the idea of civil rights, when you can actually live in a decent house and have a decent job and know your kids are going to get a decent education and know that you're going to be treated fairly no matter what your race is. I want to say, too, how very much I admire Justin Dart. For all the work that he's done as chair of the President's Commission on Employment of People with Disabilities and leader in making the Americans with Disabilities Act come to life. You know, Justin, every time we went anywhere in the campaign and had a rally, we always had a section for people with disabilities. Today I went to a suburb north of Chicago in a heavily Republican community, as it turned out, to meet with a bunch of students from the high school that I was visiting and other high schools and people in the community. And we had a big section there for the students with disabilities. And I was thinking as I was coming over here tonight, a lot of those kids are where they are today because of what you did, and you ought to be proud of that. Sitting in the front of the row so they can ask the presidents their questions and shake hands with the president instead of being overlooked, but instead of being overlooked, being uplifted. I say that to you to make one introductory point. I've been here for 100 days and some, fighting to break the gridlock in Washington. And sometimes I think the biggest gridlock of all is the gridlock in our minds. The that foolish notions have on our imaginations. I have been roundly attacked by people on the extreme right trying to make me look like some radical left-winger because I had this crazy notion that I ought to have an administration that would have some diversity and give women as well as men and people of color as well as people who look like me the chance to serve if they could meet high standards of excellence. And there are people who say, well, and I see these relentless articles in the paper, oh, that's why no appointments are being made. Well, so on 100 days, I show up at the Justice Department and I ask for the totals. Pass me the envelope, please. And it turns out that in spite of my commitment to diversity and excellence, after 100 days, my predecessor had made 99 appointments, his predecessor, President Reagan, had made 152 appointments, and I'd made 173. Where are they? You know? And I expected to see the shameless right in sackcloth and ashes saying that we had falsely accused this poor president in promoting gridlock, but they have no shame. And the people who are promoting these ideas, let me tell you something. Today, when I was in Illinois, a young, handsome, fine-looking Hispanic man stood up and said, I have joined the United States Army, and I'm proud that I'm going to serve my country. And I know we've got to cut the military budget, but I want to know if you're going to cut it so much that I can't give my whole career to my country if I want to. And I thought to myself, why doesn't somebody point out to all these people who have attacked us for trying to open the doors of opportunities that the #1 most successful institution in the United States of America for giving opportunity to women and people of color are the United States military branches? They have done it with a commitment to excellence and opportunity. And what we've got to do is to prove that the rest of us can do so as well. And we ought not to make this a partisan issue. And the guardians of gridlock should stop trying to use it to move arguments around that indicate that there's somehow something wrong with a president who believes that everybody who can serve ought to have a chance to do so. This administration is committed to the enforcement of the civil rights laws. This administration is also committed to programs like national service that give everybody the possibility of being part of a new era of civic responsibility. This administration is committed to guaranteeing that every American is entitled to a fair chance at the brass ring, but even more important, to empowering people to seize those opportunities, to moving beyond the incredible gridlock in the mind of this town, that you either have to give somebody something for nothing or take it all off the table. Why don't we behave in Washington the way people behave in their normal lives? We need opportunity and responsibility. Why don't we stop making these nutty arguments that imply that everything in life is an either-or proposition? We're either going to write somebody a check and bust the government budget, or we're just going to stick it to them and walk away. That's not the way life works. You know, civil rights should embody a country that works. We don't want to guarantee everybody equal employment opportunities when there are no jobs. Does that mean that we have to sacrifice one and not the other? No, it means you should have a president who will pursue both, walking and chewing gum at the same time. That's what this is about. Is that right? Right? We want to guarantee everybody an equal opportunity to get an education, but wouldn't it be nice if the education you're getting is also better? It's not either or. We want to guarantee everybody the right to health care and family security through health care, but wouldn't it be nice if you live in a rural area or in the heart of a big city if there happened to be a clinic to visit? I mean, I just am amazed after 100 days to find that a lot of the gridlock that has gripped this city for so long is in the imposition of what one writer has called false choices on all of us who are supposed to make policy. It never occurred to me that I should appoint somebody who wasn't qualified to a job. You know, I don't wake up in the morning thinking, I need to find some female Latino who is totally unqualified to put in a job. Or, neither did it ever occur to me that every white man I appoint is going to hit a home run every day. But that is the kind of rhetoric you see running beneath so much of the characterization when we try to change 12 years of attitudes. The same people that were criticizing the previous administrations for being insensitive to civil rights immediately turn around and say, oh, there's too much attention being given to ethnicity and gender. And that's why no appointments are being made. So the record comes in, and I'm still waiting for the acknowledgement. I tell you, folks, I refuse to believe that we cannot go forward together, that we cannot set an example, that we cannot make progress. I refuse to believe that you can't be committed to civil rights and to civic responsibility. I refuse to believe that we can't create economic opportunity by empowering people to seize control of their destiny and changing the government's policies. And I think that if this Leadership Council should have any mission today, it should be to break through those barriers that push us all into one extreme camp or the other and make us mute in the face of reality and common sense. Surely we can bring the experience of our own lives and the lives of our fellow Americans beyond the borders of this city to the policymaking process that will dominate Washington for the next year. That is what we ought to do if we want civil rights to come alive in this country. You know, when I ran for this job, I spent a lot of time in African American churches, because I always had, and because I felt at home. When I got this job, and I sought to protect the religious and civil liberties of every American, it was because I wanted mine protected and because I have a sharp memory of what it was like to live in a society where half the people I knew, because of their color, were treated as second-class citizens. I also have a sharp memory of those who had the courage to try to change that position. And now that I am president, I want you to know that I'll make my mistakes from time to time, but I'm going to keep trying to move the ball forward. I believe we can make advances. I don't believe that our fights are over. I know that there are still civil rights battles to be fought, but I know that they need to be fought today in the context of making a real difference in real people's lives. And we should not be intimidated, those of us who believe in the cause of civil rights for all Americans, into thinking that somehow that can be separated from the fight for economic justice and economic progress and making our free enterprise system work better. And we should not let people who basically don't care whether we make progress in civil rights think that you can separate civil rights from the fight for substantive improvements in education and for meaningful advances in health care or any other area of our national life. Let us resolve tonight that we're going to spend the next 4 years breaking down the gridlock by tearing down the artificial barriers in people's minds to bringing us together, saying we don't have a person to waste, and lifting up everybody's God-given potential and doing what we can to see that they achieve it. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Let's give our president another great big hand. A real big hand. Come on. Bring your hands together. And our vice president.